Welcome to the Windrush Caribbean Film Festival. The journey continues. On this episode, The Future is Ours, we talk to Suzann McLean. She's the woman that leads, guides, and trains some of the brightest lights on stage and on film. Tune in and follow our socials for more.
Suzann.
Hi, Nadine. Thank you so much for having me here. So I'm Suzann McLean. I'm the CEO, Artistic Director of Theatre Peckham. I'm the founder and director of Young and Talented School of Stage and Screen. I'm an actress, a wife and a mum.
That's such a wonderful repertoire, Suzann. And part of the reason we've invited you as a guest today is because you've done everything. You are, I guess in journalism, we call you a one-man band or one-woman band in this case, in that you acted, you write, you produce, you direct, and now you train the future generation. Why do you do that?
So, I just feel that in my kind of like journey coming through as an artist, I didn't come from a family that were in the arts. I didn't really know that the arts could be somewhere that was for me, but the experience that I had through the arts just did so much for me. And I think it was whilst I was at drama school, and I just had this feeling that I just really wanted to give back to the next generation, to share my skills. But then also, the arts has been through and continues to go through such challenging times that I wanted to be able to make some changes that are there. And I feel like, when I reflect back on, 25, it's over, I don't know how to say how many years it's been, almost 30 years, I think, of being in the arts. I just feel like there's just been, I've been building up these soldiers that are just going out there who are now impacting the arts in ways that if I was just focused on my own journey and what I could do, it wouldn't have been as impactful as it is right now, because I've got this wealth of young people who probably started with me when they were 10 and now they're 30, who are out there, kicking ass and making change in the industry. And that's how we're diversifying and making the changes within the industry.
You used a really interesting word. You said they're soldiers, they're your soldiers, and then they're out there kicking ass and making change. How have you taught them? What weapons have you given them to fight?
I think that starts with their own personal sense of who they are and their own personal identity. I think that was one of the things that, again, was such a challenge for me in the arts as a young person coming in. I always felt like I had to be somebody else. You're looking at these people who are on the stage or on the screen. The time when I was coming through, it wasn't as diverse as it is now. And I remember going through this thing of going, oh gosh, I really need to change. If I'm going to survive in this art space, I'm going to have to change who I am as a person. And it took me quite some time to kind of go, hang on a second, no, who I am as a person is what the arts needs. And so that's been the fundamental, I think, about what I have been doing to the young people coming through. And it has been as obvious as that, because I've had young people saying the same thing. Oh, I thought when I was doing this, I had to do it like X. And I'm like, no, what's your flavor? Who are you? Why isn't your story just as important? Or the experience, the life experience that you bring into this, why can't that come into that? Why do you have to drop that to put on a different mask in order to say that you're accepted? Why can't you take your full, authentic self into the space and have that live and breathe and share?
Isn't that acting, though, to wear a mask?
In what sense? Like, you shouldn't be wearing a mask in terms of who you are as a person, like how you go into a theatre space, I don't know, an audition or in a show or something like that. Yes, you play a character when you're playing the character, but when you're dissecting the work and, even when you enter that space to have a conversation or to say, if you're a writer taking your script or something like that, you shouldn't have to wear a mask at that point.
Okay, so for those of us that are not artists, can you break that down for us a bit? So if we think about somebody who's really popular at the moment, say like Aaron Pierre, who has a Caribbean background, a descendant of the Windrush generation, whose big work is all American accents and playing African American characters. Would you say that somebody like him isn't bringing his whole self? Or do you think somehow his Caribbean background impacts the work that he does?
So just for clarity, there's two separate things there. When you're playing a character, you're playing a character, right? There's given circumstances that are around that character. So dependent on what that character is, you're going to live up to those given circumstances. But you're in the shell of the body that you're in. So you're bringing that to the part. So if, I don't know, even if we think about Shakespeare, if somebody's playing, I don't know, Romeo in a Shakespeare play, and they're a Black Caribbean man, they can't play Romeo as a white northern man because they're in the shell of the body that they're in. And that's what makes it exciting and brilliant, because they're bringing that into the role. They're still in the given circumstances of the play. So they're still like, I don't know, Romeo's a young person who's in love, who comes from this family, who's in, you know, they're bringing all of that that's a given circumstances, but they're in the shell of the body. So they're bringing that through. And also they've got their own personal lived experiences that, again, informs what the shell of their body is and how they think. So they're bringing all of that, all the intersectionalities of that into the role that they're doing.
And why do you think that's so important?
I think it's important, but it's also, it is what it is. It has to be that way. You cannot, like I said before, you cannot go as a you know, a Black Caribbean man and think that you're going to do your role as a white northern man. You know, it's just not possible to do that. So it's a fact of the matter, but it's also you know, we see with our eyes what we see in front of us, this shell of a person who's doing this part. So it's bringing all of that glory into it.
And how do you inspire that in the young people that you train? How do you inspire that when often when they go into these spaces, there are very few people that look like them, sound like them, have their lived experience, share the same cultural background? How do you do that?
So whenever we're doing anything, I'm always like, yeah, but what would you do? What's true to you? How would you respond? What would you? So we're going, and again, that's asking people and giving them validation of their own thoughts and experience to kind of go, oh, okay. So if it was me, I would have done X. And I'm like, cool. So if this character therefore was like you, can we bring some of that into that? And that kind of like empowers them for their own their own existence, their own experience, and it makes them feel like they've got their own value of, you know, the experience that they had in their lives feel valued, and they're bringing that through into the parts that they're playing.
Do you consider your work in any way to be activism?
Yeah, you know, this has been something that I've been really challenged with over the years, because I've always felt like, oh, I just want to be me, going out, just doing the things that I love. But when I dig down into it, it is 100% activism. I mean, it's like, you know, going back to me going, oh, like, you know, the soldiers that are out there. It's, you know what I mean? It would be really like, oh, how are you saying that? And you're saying you're not an activist. It is. And I'm not doing it because I want to form any, like, there's no sense of harm towards people or anything like that. It's just the fact of like, things need to change. They need to change. And the only way I believe that things change is when people kind of like, you know, pop their head above the parapet and just go, right, we're going to actually do something. I think so many times in, you know, particularly in my career span that I've been through, there's always been these like different initiatives to kind of support diversity within the arts, or a new thing comes up and it gets a new title, and we're going to do this and we're changing. And I think the answers have always been so easy, super clear. We know what we need to do. But we kind of, as a society, just don't do the things that we need to do, which are the simplest things. We kind of just like to spend a lot of time talking about it, researching it, unpicking it. It's like, we kind of need to call it what it is and move forward. And I think that's my form of activism.
What is it? What are we calling it?
Sadly, we are, there are cultural hierarchies within the system, and we need to change those. Yes, we think about the change that has happened. Yes, of course, there are more Black, ethnically diverse, global majority artists performing and getting roles, and in ways that there weren't, 30, 40 years ago. We understand that. However, the people who are making decisions, that decision-making position is still not changing in the way that it needs to change. And I mean, coming back to something you said earlier as well, like that was one of the reasons why I started to go into arts leadership, because again, I was like, this whole thing needs to change. And although myself as an actor, without the power in the way, because, I'm waiting on a script writer, a director, a casting director, a film company, a theatre. Do you know what I mean? You're so far down back in the line that I was like, oh, okay, so if I could put myself in a position of being higher up in the line, I can then do the stuff that I'm saying that I think needs to change. And that's definitely my role, and what my role has been at Theatre Peckham. We've like really flipped the switch on it. We have so many artists where we're just like, look, the stage is there. Come in with your true, authentic self. Take the stage, put on the work that you want to put on, put it in front of an audience that your audience, because you know that they need to hear this story because you haven't seen this story before. And that audience come, and that artist gets their work in front of an audience. And then what tends to happen so many times, the artists say, do you know how many times, Suzann, I've sent this script to all these different theatres and nobody's ever picked it up, and they've told me to go away and do more writing or dramaturgy, or or they don't really quite get the story, or they don't really think that there's an audience for it, all the same kind of stuff that's been said time and time again. And sometimes those same theatres come to see it on stage with the audience who really resonate with that piece, and then the theatre's like, oh my gosh, this piece is incredible. And I'm like, yeah, it is incredible, and it was incredible when the person sent the script in. Do you know what I mean? But you set up all of these different parameters. And I don't mean that in a way to be down on any other theatres for doing that, because it's the system. But also it's that thing of going, well, if you're not from, I don't know, if you're not from Southeast London and you don't know the experiences that a young Black African Southeast Londoner is going through, when you read that script, yeah, you probably are like, oh, I don't really get it. I don't really think that this is true. I don't really understand it. Do you know what I mean? You might, that might be from a genuine place. So, and again, that's why I'm going, but in your theatre, if you then don't have people within that space who can actually look at that script, take it and go and kind of go, no, hang on a second. No, I get this. I know where this is going. And I definitely know this. I know this person. You those times when you read a script or you see a play and you're just like, oh my gosh, that's my auntie. I know her, Something else, it might be over the top. It might be, and you're like, oh gosh, would they really say that? And we're like, yeah, they would. They would. Yeah. That's what happens on a Sunday. Yeah. And you need that in there.
So how would you describe the unique, I don't know, je ne sais quoi, the essence that somebody from I guess, would it be appropriate to say a non-traditional background? What is it, if you, when you advocate for your students and you send your soldiers out into the artistic world, if you were to sum it up and say, like, this is what they have, this is what somebody like me, this is what somebody from Southeast London or Northwest London, that is of Caribbean or maybe African descent, like, what is it so unique that they have that they can bring to a role or bring to a writer's room?
I feel, and I've always felt, that we are so fortunate that we have this brilliant intersectionality within ourselves. So we have our, and I'm talking about Black people in the UK. So in this, so we're going, and if I talk about myself, I'm going, right, okay, so I'm British, I was born here, and I've got that experience of the British way of doing things. My dad is from Trinidad. So I've got the whole Trinidadian experience that lives within me. My mum is from Bermuda, which, although we kind of like, we put Caribbean as Caribbean, Bermuda and Trinidad are two completely different places. So I've got that whole cultural understanding and experience of Bermuda. Plus I've got my identity as a Black person, which transcends whether or not it's just Caribbean. So I tap into my African heritage within that. And then within that, so we've got these broader communities. My husband's family is Jamaican. So now I've, embraced a new Caribbean into that mix. And then so you've got the whole like extended families now that are going through across the Caribbean, across African heritage. And then you've got the British, so you've got that kind of Western European-ness in there as well. And I think, like, when I was young and growing up, there was this whole thing of like, can you actually say that you're Black and British, and can you be proud to say that? And do you just, and I felt like I used to find myself being more challenged by that, because I couldn't just say my heritage is just from one place, because it'd be easier to just say, yeah, I'm Trinidadian. But it always felt like, oh, but am I now denying? Like, well, how's my mum feeling when she's like, no, where's your Bermudian in that? So I was like, really like, no, I'm it's this mix of experiences. And I think that's what really stands us apart. That's what makes people, as their artists, bringing all of those experiences into their work. And I feel like we just can't be in a place where we're denying that. And sometimes it's felt like that. It's like this, there's a restaurant across the road from Theatre Peckham, newly run by a Black woman. And she's doing this, she calls it a smash jacket. So it's a jacket potato with jerk chicken, with a really seasoned salad and all the rest of it. And we were just talking yesterday, and she was just like, she was asking me for some business advice. And I was like, you just got to keep doing your thing. And she's like, the amount of people are like, yeah, but I just want my jerk chicken and rice. And she's like, yeah, but I'm doing a thing here. I'm doing a fusion. I'm doing and I tell you, it's the best thing ever. It's things like that of kind of going, yeah, why can't we make claim to kind of go, yeah, I'm going to take your, King Edward potato, and I'm going to give it my Caribbean flex. And I'm going to, do you know what I mean? And that ownership and that bringing of stuff is just so rich and beautiful when we're not afraid to do that. And I think that's what I'm advocating within my soldiers that are going out. Bring everything, put it all out there, hold it, embrace it, and share it.
Tell me about your soldiers. So where are a few of them? Are they in film? Are they on stage? What it is? How do they earn how do they earn their medals, their purple stars, or their medals of valor?
Yeah. They're all over the place. I mean, they're in the West End, so We've got people in Hamilton, in Michael Jackson, little Cristiano, who's, gosh, how old is he now? Maybe he's like 13 now, just turned. He's playing little Michael in MJ in the West End. Then we've got people in film, TV, not that he's was taught by me, because John Boyega was here before I came in leadership at Theatre Peckham, but John Boyega started his journey at Theatre Peckham, and obviously, the amazing career that he's having. So they're out there in every form, and they're out there being writers, they're out there being directors, they're in everything, technical side of things, they're doing it all.
That's fantastic. That's actually fantastic. And it was really wonderful how you expressed your intersectionality from a Caribbean perspective, a broader diaspora perspective. But can we also attribute that to broader film markets, like, say, from Nollywood for those of African descent for the Caribbean, or from Bollywood for those of Indian descent in the Caribbean? How do you think that young people in Britain with intersecting racial, ethnic, and cultural identities can use their skills in other film centres?
So can you repeat the question? How can they? Sorry.
So in terms of the intersectionality that you described from your Caribbean intersectionality, so within that you spoke about being Black and being a member of the African diaspora, and I'm wondering how that can translate, or how that could relate to the cross-fertilization in Nollywood or even Bollywood. Is that something you think is possible, or is it something that's happening now?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I think there's something that's been really interesting about how technology has advanced, and that, again, back in my day, it's the power to make a film was always in the people who had the money in order to make a film, and now people can make a film on their iPhone, right? And you can put those on YouTube and such like. So we are now in a position to connect more with so many other forms of art form of work. So when you're talking about Nollywood and the work that's been made there, and how that's been, improving, how that's been growing, how the infrastructure is just continually growing there. Therefore, then their connection to us as UK artists is now growing, because we're actually able to kind of put forward our own content, which can then be picked up abroad, and therefore then there's more opportunities for us to connect. Whereas years ago, it just felt like very, very in their own sections, because we couldn't see the work as well as we could. Even when we're thinking about the platforms that are there to view, like, there are so many different great platforms. I'm trying to not mention things, but there are very lots of different, no product placement, but there's so many different ways of putting content out there that's making us now more connected than we've ever been before.
Okay. The arts you have to be really resilient. The impression that you get is that if you're an artist, you have to get used to rejection, and so as a result of that, you have to be really resilient. So what do you think separates those people that burn out really early and give up to those people that find a way to stay in it?
I would say it just all comes down to, like, what are you actually really doing it for? I feel like if you're in the arts because you've seen that there are people out there who make lots of money, and you just want to be, a celebrity, and you want to be making loads of money, then if you're not getting that in the early days, or you can't see the pathway to that, then you're going to decide that this isn't for you, because you're going to say that, well, it's just not doing what it needs to do. I think the people that are really resilient and continue in the arts is because they've got a deeper passion there. They've got a story they want to tell. They've got an impact that they want to make. And that story or that impact is bigger and more important than just them alone. So it's about going. So when you think about, I don't know, a lot of those artists who are doing great stuff, and you'll hear them on podcasts or interviews and stuff like that, and whenever you're asking them, like, why do they want to be a part of a certain film, or there's always something broader. They'll talk about, like, this was a story that needed to be told, and it needed to be told in a certain way, or this is an artist that needed to be championed, or this is, so, and really that's what I believe that the arts is actually about. It's not about serving your own personal ego. It's about, widening our understanding of the world and impacting the world and impacting people and broadening what we think or how we understand things. So, yeah, I think that's where the resilience comes from. I mean, I think when I think about myself, I think there's so many challenges that I've been through in the arts that if I wasn't driven by something else, I would definitely not be here. But because the drive is there, that's what like fires me up when I wake up in the morning, because I'm like, right, okay, I need to go and do this. And in a way, every step I'm going to do this. And once that's completed, then I can, like, step away and get on with something else. And it's like, oh, as soon as that's completed, I'm like, oh yeah, but there's this next little bit. And in a way, like, that's kind of my thing with, when I started Young and Talented, which was 21 years ago, and Young and Talented is for, goes up to the age of 16. And it was then I was like, oh, this is doing great and it's amazing, but there's something else that needs to happen. And then I started a rep company from like 17 to 25. And I was like, yeah, because I need to do something for that age group. And then Theatre Peckham came up, and it was like, oh, I need to do something broader, because Young and Talented is just in the East, it's small. Now I need to have more of an impact, because there's more people that need that. And then also I was going, but these artists that I've trained who've gone up to the age of 16, they're now, like, I don't know, in their early 20s. And I need to give them a platform. So I need to create Peckham Fringe so that they've got a space where they can come and do in our Young, Gifted and Black season. I need to do that so that, so the driver has always been there, because I'm like, no, the change needs to happen. And it feels almost like it's a relay race with a baton going, oh, okay, I've done this bit, and now we need to go on to the next bit. And the pathway keeps becoming clearer the longer I'm kind of like going along, if that makes sense. Yeah.
What is the drive? Where does that drive come from? Because hearing you, all I hear is passion. I'm alive, and I'm like, I don't know why I'm so excited, but I am. Like, you've just got this burning light. You feel like a sun right now. So, like, where does that drive come from? Because you're a mum, you're a wife. I'm sure that means you're a very active family member. You've got these 4 side businesses. Like, what is that? And how can I get some?
I mean, I think working with young people keeps you vibrant and fresh, because they're coming with their newness. I think it's really important always to stay up to date with the world as it's moving along. I mean, I don't know. I think there's definitely something that came from the challenges that I personally had in my own journey into the arts. That whole, being told that this isn't a space for me. And I know when people, say those things, and people are always like, oh, but did somebody actually really, and I'm like, yeah, like, yes. Do you know what I mean? And we're not lying. No, yes. From the age of, I remember my first thing when well, how old was I? Maybe about 13, 14. And my school, often going off on a tangent here, but, my school was doing a production of Trojan Women, a Greek play. And I went for a really small part, really tiny part. I was like, I can go and do this. And I was probably the only person who was doing art outside of school, because I used to go to a class outside. And the teacher said, she hasn't cast me in it because there was no part for me. So I'd said, I know I didn't get the part that I went for, but is there any part for me? And she said, no, there's no part in this play that you could play. And obviously in my head, I'm like, oh, okay, and took that away. And it wasn't until there was some years later, because you know how it is, most schools you have, I don't know, the English teacher is doing we didn't have a drama department or anything. And so it was years later and something else came up where I had that same kind of rebuttal. And it made me reflect on that other one. I was like, hang on a second. Because I remember going to see that play and there were only white people who were cast in that. And it made me kind of like understand there that, okay, cool. So I didn't get the part because I wasn't good enough. I got the part because I wasn't white. And in your production, that's what you needed, because you were thinking, I'm doing this Greek play and I need people, I don't know, who look Greek. Because I'm thinking, I don't know if everyone in the play looked Greek. I don't know if everyone in the play resonates with being Greek. And I don't know if you actually, as the director, even cared. But what you did care was that I was going to stand out in that, and you didn't want me in that. Right? So when these things that come up, and that's me as a young person at the age of 14. And I remember when I went to drama school, and we were in our first year of drama school, and the director of that show, the first show that we're doing, said, oh, they're going to take in consideration of what we would like to play and what they're casting. And so we were doing Antigone, another great play, a Greek play, right? So obviously, and again, these things are like so deep within me. I'm like, okay, trauma from before coming back. Oh, this. So I was like, okay, there's a part of the soldier, and the soldier has like, I don't know, small bits of lines. I'm like, let me just say, I want to play the soldier because maybe I'll get a look in, right? And it came back, and she cast me as Antigone, the lead. I got on the phone to my mum, and I was like, Mum, they've cast me as Antigone. I can't believe this. This is going to be embarrassing. How could she cast me as that? What do you think she's doing? There's no other black person in my year. Antigone's got a sister. She's got an uncle. She's got da-da-da. So all these other people are going to play that, and she's casting me that. Da-da-da. Anyway, so my mum gave me some slaps down the phone. I was like, what are you talking about? And then, and I still went to the director and I said, look, can I, why have you cast me in this role? And she started saying, okay, but can you identify with a woman whose brother has been killed and he's lying out in the streets, and the king of the land will not allow you to give your brother a burial? Can you, and that's the story of Antigone, and so many things within it. And she was like, can you? And I was like, yeah, I can. And she's like, well, that's what I'm looking for, Suzann. I'm looking for you to bring yourself into this role. And, you know, and so even at that point, I'm kind of going, wow, what the difference is from my previous thing of being told, this isn't for you, to then get into a point where I'm like, oh, okay, actually, if I'm able to not deny who I am, but I'm able to bring everything that is me into a role, then that's a beautiful place for me to be within the arts. And I think, you know, in answer to your question, I think it's probably that. It's that what I'm trying to say to people, because I've gone through that for myself. I want them to know, bring your full self. Who you are is enough. All of your like cultural intersectionality, bring that into the work. And that's how we change the experiences that we all want to have within the arts. Because that we're saying that we want to have change. And I do think it's that simple to make change.
What excites you at the moment in terms of, if anything, what excites you at the moment in terms of the infrastructure that exists? You spoke about all the different digital platforms and the advances in technology, but what else excites you at the moment?
I'm just excited by the kind of like the changes that are happening, and the people that are going out and getting, like, sometimes I'll see people who are in jobs, in roles, and I'm like, wow, what a difference, how far have we come. And sometimes, like, you know, obviously you can't always tell what somebody's cultural heritage is from their name. So sometimes you're looking at those names, like even my name, do you know what I mean? Just like Suzann McLean, who is she? This white Scottish woman, I don't know, right? And so we don't even know that. And then you see the person and you're like, oh my goodness, like, wow. And that really super excites me, because it's about those people being in those positions, bringing people up and making, you know, continually to make the change in the industry.
If you could bring a story that's reflective of your cultural intersectionality, or any story, to the screen or to the stage, what would it be?
Oh gosh, what would the story be? There's a piece about empowerment that I'm trying to find the right way, because I don't mean it in that kind of just standardized, glorified way, but I just feel like a piece about navigating the world and navigating the systems that are there into being, I don't know, empowered to live like I don't know, I see this kind of like this egg breaking through, this breakthrough piece. And I'm not saying by far I haven't achieved that. I'm still navigating my way. I'm still, like, you know, trying to, get there. But I think it's something to do with that. And I think the whole world could just be such a nicer place if we could just, I don't know, understand each other more, be nicer to each other, not feel that we have to step on somebody else to get ahead. I know I'm going off on a real tangent, but I don't know. I think, it's kind of, you've set me in a place quite emotional when you said that.
But it's your philosophy, though, isn't it? You're talking about your philosophy for life. So if you
Yeah.
had creative freedom, what would that look like? Would that be like a horror movie? Because now black horror is a thing, right? Or would it be sci-fi? Because you've got a few kind of global majority sci-fi leads at the moment. From the answers that you've given or our exchange, you're not tied to narratives of suffering or immigration, and you think far more broadly. You encompass the kind of holistic human experience. So with your full creative freedom, what would you imagine that could potentially look like?
I interestingly enough, like aside from those things, I really like comedy. So I think I like comedy in the sense of, and I guess, is it the form where they say serio comedy, meaning that there's a serious drama element, but it's told in an entertaining way. And what I love about those kind of things is that thing of like just drawing people in and kind of like going, yeah, but just like really, really connect in a way that it doesn't feel like you're being, I don't know, preached to. And then once you've got people in, you then slap them with the message and they're like, what? Didn't see that coming. I feel like I think it would be through that kind of form. There's been, and even though, I mean, this isn't it, but like even something like how I love a show like Blackish, because it does that when you're like, you're just enjoying it and you're enjoying the fun and everything else, but the purpose and the kick to it is so strong that you can't miss the point that we're making, but you've enjoyed 25 minutes of watching TV. And I think it's those kind of things of just kind of going, yeah, and you can all watch it. It's that thing of so many times, and again, in this whole kind of who's the arts for, who's the piece for, and so many times we're like, oh, okay, is that just for a black audience, or is that just for is that a black show that's actually made for white liberals to feel good about themselves, and all of those challenges that we need to make. I want to do something that can bring everyone in to watching that and connecting it. And when the kick comes, depending on what kind of intersectionality you are within that, you're going to feel it differently, but you've had a moment of shared experience where we've all enjoyed it together. But if it kicks you in a different way that it kicks the next person, then that's still good, because you probably got the kick that you needed.
And that's the power of art, isn't it? To be able to reach everybody where they need to be reached.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, 100%.
Is there anything you'd like to say that I haven't asked you?
I don't know. I mean, you asked me about like how I feel about like the future, and I feel hopeful. Despite I'm smiling and I'm going on and everything's just, but there's been challenges. There's been stuff when I've just been like, I don't know if I want to continue doing this anymore, or what's the point, or where's the justice in this? But then I think when I'm seeing, particularly again, when I'm seeing the young people that are coming through, that are doing what they need to do, coming in, wanting to shift, that inspires me more, that energizes me more to keep going and keep shifting. I think there's an important part of legacy that's within that. That's another thing, I guess, going back to the soldiers. What am I instilling within my soldiers? I am instilling a sense of respect for legacy in them as well, because I think that can be, I get so frustrated, I think is the word, when people are always like, this is the first Black person who has done da 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 da. And you're like, actually, just 2 minutes ago, there was this other person, and before that, another person. And if we go back to 1940, whatever, you'll also see there was another person. But we keep kind of tending to do that, and almost like we're stuck in the circle of trying to say that, we've not been here before, because somebody's always happy to kind of own being the first when they weren't. Like, when they'll say, I don't know, this person is the first Black director, or even even somebody said not long ago about somebody being the first director of a theatre, like a artistic director of a theatre. And I was like, as a artistic director of a theatre who is Black myself, I was like, what are you doing? And why are you picking this up? And I know, and I'm not saying that just for me, I'm saying that for all the others that have come before me as well, that I'm standing on the shoulders of. And so I think that's the thing that I want to instill in us as well, of kind of like going, just know that when the system is trying to tell you to own that, do some of your research yourself. If you are the first, fine, that's good. If you're not, bring in the legacy of that. There was one time, and there was an actor, Don Gillette. He was on a morning program. This was like years ago, and I can't remember what the show was. He was doing the show where he was a detective, and as the lead. And the person on the interview said, and it's so great, Don, because you're the first Black detective in a da-da-da. And Don brilliantly said, actually, you know what, I'm not. In 1960, there was a da-da-da. Do you know what I mean? And I was like, go on, Don, incredible. That's what we need to do. It quietened the journalist. It gave some historical context of legacy. It told all the viewers, we as Black people, we've been here, and we've been doing our thing, and don't erase that, and don't try and make me as if I'm standing up here as the hero for all Black people. My ancestors were doing this way long before me, and I'm going to bring them on the TV with me and share that message out to the world. So I think that's something that I think is so important. That's something that I instill in our young people, and I think by doing things like that, we'll continue to just make the change that we need to make.
I think it's so important that you balance your passion and your incredible creativity with how difficult the journey is sometimes, and still is, because it's honest. Right. And I think that sometimes people aren't as honest as perhaps they can be, because you need the skills when you're in the valley. Because when you're in the valley, sometimes it can be really hard to pull yourself out of it. You also spoke about legacy. What does that mean to you? What does legacy mean to Suzann McLean, the white woman from Scotland?
Legacy for me is an embracement of all that has come before, and then when you bring it into yourself, it's an embracement of everything that made you who you are. I mean, interestingly, for my personal legacy, like my dad was a mature dad when he had me. So my dad was born in 1922. And there's 20 years between the age of my mum and my dad. So in terms of the thing, like, so as you can imagine, the 1922 lives very close to me because that was my dad, and I've got all of his experience from all the way back then. The 1940s from my mum lives within me because of that generation. And then because of the going back to the 1922 from my dad, it goes further, you know, I've got all of his previous life experience. So when I think of my, the legacy that I hold, and, you know, sometimes people say, oh, you know, but Suzann, you seem to have so much wisdom and whatever else. I'm thinking, yeah, because even within me as a person, it spans so far back in generations, whereas for some people it could just be, you know, 20 years back, and I'm going so far back. When one of the things that my parents kind of like instilled within us as children was always legacy. So, and that was always about those I don't know if you had this, Nadine, but the old cine video, the, you know, the pictures that go up. Do you know what I mean? Sitting there with
What's it
called, the white bed sheet, hang that up, right?
Moving
and
pictures.
Yeah,
We just call them moving pictures with the white bed sheet.
exactly, right.
Yep.
And you know, we used to do this, you know, like every year. My dad used to sit us down, put the screen up, and go, this is great grandma such and such. This is This is, so when Roots came out, the original Roots, I was like, yeah, we do that once a year. Do you know what I mean? We're like, right. But the importance of that, and also with those pictures of kind of like seeing how we lived, getting an experience, getting an understanding, you know, at the time, you know, you're seeing somebody come with a, yeah, and I know obviously like you can get mangoes in the shop, but back then you could, you know, but you're seeing, you're like, oh, what are they? Oh yeah, that's a mango. You know, you're constantly learning. What is your heritage? What is your roots? And I think I don't know how one properly exists and really knows themselves if they don't really have an understanding of the roots of where they come from. And I think that's what legacy is meaning for me. It's like your roots, and there's two prongs of that. There's the roots that is to do with you as an individual, so like I'm saying about like your parentage and stuff like that, but then there's the wider roots. Then that becomes the countries of heritage. And then for me personally, I believe that then all roots back to Africa. So it's a going along that whole lineage, which is why we then talk about like the diaspora of where we are today, but it's all linked back to that one root.
Suzann, it's always a pleasure. And as I stated earlier, I am a super fan, and more people need to engage with you. They need to engage with the artistic services that you offer, because you really are a luminary, and we don't want you to be one of our unsung heroes. We want to sing and we want to praise you loud. So thank you for joining us today and sharing your wonder and joy.
Thank you, Nadine. Thank you. It's been a pleasure.